13th meeting, and a little dissertation that we need to do here. This meeting is called Pursuant to the Provisions of the Open Public Meetings Law. This meeting of September 13th, 2022, with instructions for internet access, was included in a meeting notice sent to the Burlington County Times and Courier Post on January 6, 2022, and advertised in said newspapers on January 9th and January 12th, 2022. Respectfully posted on the website and the bulletin board in the municipal building on January 6, 2022, and has remained continuously posted as required under the statute. In addition, a copy of this notice is and has been available to the public and is on file in the office of the municipal clerk. So the first order of business is the flag salute. If everybody would please stand up.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, may we have a roll call, please?
Mayor McLaughlin?
Here.
Mr. Klaus?
Yeah, here.
Mr. Levinson?
Here.
Mrs. Gilmore? Here. Mr. Montgomery?
Here. Okay, everybody's here. We have the regular committee meeting minutes of August 9th, 2022, and the executive session minutes of August 9th, 2022 to approve.
Take a motion to approve minutes.
Second.
Mr. Montgomery?
Yes.
Mr. Levinson?
Yes.
Mr. Klaus?
Yes.
Mrs. Gilmore? Yes. Mayor McLaughlin?
Yes. And in the report section, we have the tax collector, code enforcement, fire official, construction office, emergency services reports, and the New Jersey State Police in-person report from August 2022 to approve and enter into the record.
So move.
Second.
Mrs. Gilmore? Yes. Mr. Levinson?
Yes.
Mr. Klaus?
Yes.
Mr. Montgomery?
Yes.
Mayor McLaughlin?
Yes. So we will open the floor for comments from the public on any item that's on tonight's agenda. So come on up there.
Good evening, Anna Evans, 63 Parry Drive. I want to speak on Resolution 7C 2022-127-9, which is the one about Longbridge Farms LLC. And I'm going to bring up something that I have brought up before, but nothing has been done about it, so I hope you don't mind me bringing it up again. This Longbridge redevelopment plan, okay, which may or may not now be being developed by Ryan Homes LLC, it's confusing for residents as to where it is, especially because I believe that there is another redevelopment plan in the works, which is also going to Longbridge Farms LLC. So on those plans, that development plan is also called Longbridge Farms LLC, right? So what I've asked before and what I'm going to say again is, could we please get a map of Hainesport, an aerial view maybe, or just a plan up on the Township website, where we have like line drawings surrounding all of the different areas that are under development or there's development in the works, and name them on the Township website and use those names consistently every time we refer to them in the minutes, in the agendas, or just in general conversation. Because I know for a fact, just having perused Hainesport happenings over the past couple of weeks, residents are very confused by all of the different developments and all of the different names and what's going on where, and I really think that would be helpful. Yep.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else with a comment on an item from tonight's agenda? Anybody online?
We do have one person online.
On Anna's comment, I understand the confusion. Scott, I would need to defer to you on how we might be able to accomplish that in the future, I mean, is there a way, I mean, some of these are not named yet until the process gets
Yeah.
underway, and I don't even know if Longbridge Farms has their own street address at this point.
They don't. That typically happens after the board approval, and those are assigned by the township. So just very briefly, Longbridge Farms LLC is part of the Longbridge redevelopment plan, and that's the area opposite Easton Way.
Right.
On Hainesport, Mount Laurel Road, that also has frontage on Route 38. That is proposed for 45 townhomes, and that had been called Longbridge LLC for years. I believe that's the ownership entity. Most recently, the property that is on Bancroft that was developed for senior homes, they have said that that is now going to be called Longbridge Estates. So that is where the confusion came in. This may become an issue of whoever gets approved and gets to the township first for the naming. That may happen, but, so it did create some confusion. I did pass along that status to the Longbridge Farms, Radicchio Route 38 property, and I understand that they're going to be contemplating potentially a different name for their project.
Of course, Longbridge does have a name association with Hainesport going way, way back. So that's, I'm sure, why it's being used. So, I mean, Andy, you're saying some kind of a map or something?
Yeah, I mean, like, all of the, if you go into the area of Hainesport Township site that is resources for the joint land use board, you can find all of these plans separately in the different development plans. All I'm suggesting is put them all together on one big map of Hainesport so that people can look at the map and say, oh, that's the Longbridge development plan, that's the Route 38 bypass development plan. You see what I'm saying? So you can like look at a huge number of Hainesport and pick up all of the different development areas. I guarantee you people are very confused when they look at the actual names.
And this one is confusing, if I can, Mr. Mayor, just because we really haven't had two that have ever been the same thing. The only thing I will say is every one of the redevelopment plans that does get adopted has a site location map in it, so anybody that clicks on that knows, okay, that's on Hainesport, Mount Laurel Road, directly opposite Easton. That's where that property is.
But what I'm saying is, it's actually hard to do that. Like, if you go into the individual site plans, you have to like really focus in and go, well, that's Easton Way, that's Route 38. If you saw it, we all know what Hainesport looks like as a shape. If you had the whole of Hainesport and you could see where all these things were, I think it would just be more easy to understand where development is going on.
That's something that needs to be considered and looked at from every different direction, so thanks for the suggestion. That's a good one. So next we have, we're going to close public comment at this point. We have somebody?
No, we do not. But I wanted to make a request. If we could make a request to amend the agenda to add a resolution under consent, and that would be Resolution 2022-134-9, and that would be to appoint municipal alternate fund commissioner, claims coordinator, and safety coordinator.
Okay, so we're going to close public comment. We'd like to have a motion to amend the agenda first. So moved. Second?
Mr. Levinson?
Yes.
Mr. Montgomery?
Yes.
Mrs. Gilmore?
Yes.
Mr. Klaus?
Yes.
Mayor McLaughlin?
Yes. Now we'd like a motion to add Resolution 2022-134-9 to the agenda. Motion?
Second.
Mr. Klaus?
Yes.
Mrs. Gilmore?
Yes.
Mr. Levinson?
Yes.
Mr. Montgomery?
Yes.
Mayor McLaughlin?
Yes, so this will fall under the consent agenda resolutions. I'm just going to read that these items below are considered routine by the Township of Hainesport and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no formal discussion of these items. If discussion is desired, this item will be removed from the consent agenda and be considered separately. So the committee has their choice here. So I'm going to read the resolutions quickly. 2022-119-9 authorizes execution of a fiscal year 2023 sub-grant agreement with BC Commissioners for Governor's Council on Alcoholism and Drug Abuse, fiscal grant cycle July 2020 to June 2025. So that's a grant. Resolution 2022-120-9 authorizes the specific specifications and solicitation of bids for a storm sewer replacement adjacent to 22 Bancroft Lane. Resolution 2022-121-9 authorizes discharge of mortgage for affordable housing contribution. Resolution 2022-122-9 approves a block party for Iowa Avenue. 2022-123-9 approving an inspection escrow for Hainesport Enterprises Incorporated. 2022-124-9, ordering the correction of the township's tax record and authorizing the refund of an excessive payment to Richard and Brianna Adornetto, I will say. And then the one we added was 2022-134-9, which appoints municipal alternate fund commissioners for as a claims coordinator and safety coordinator. Tara Wicker, alternate fund commissioner, Tara Wicker, claims coordinator, Tara Wicker, and safety coordinator are Paula Costco. So committee, what's your pleasure?
I'll make a motion.
A second?
Mrs. Gilmore?
Yes.
Mr. Klaus?
Yes.
Mr. Levinson?
Yes.
Mr. Montgomery?
Yes.
Mayor McLaughlin?
Yes. In the standard resolution section, we have 2022-125-9, which awards a contract for licensed site remediation for professional services for Paul's Tank Farm, if you will. This thing's been going on for years and years and years. Thank goodness we've been able to get grants to clean it up. We do have some businesses that are interested in buying it and developing it if we can get it cleaned up. So moved.
Second.
Mr. Levinson?
Yes.
Mrs. Gilmore?
Yes.
Mr. Klaus?
Yes.
Mr. Montgomery?
Yes.
Mayor McLaughlin?
Yes. Resolution 2022-126-9 awards a contract for storm sewer replacement adjacent to 22 Bancroft Lane. So the municipality is burdened with repairing this storm sewer pipe or line that's failed, basically.
I make a motion. Second?
Mr. Klaus?
Yes.
Mr. Levinson?
Yes.
Mrs. Gilmore?
Yes.
Mr. Montgomery?
Yes.
Mayor McLaughlin?
Yes, and Resolution 2022-127-9, determining Longbridge Farms LLC and Ryan Holmes drawing and elevations plans as being consistent with the Longbridge redevelopment plan and agreement. Scott, do you have a comment you might want to make on this before we offer it?
I can very briefly. This is for the Longbridge Farms LLC redevelopment plan over 38 in Hainesport, Mount Laurel Road. As a requirement of the redevelopment plan, when the redevelopment plan was written, there was a conceptual plan and very conceptual architectural facades that were included as part of that. So part of the process is, once a developer is selected for those homes, that those architecture plans get resubmitted back to the governing body for a general consistency review with the redevelopment plan. The potential redeveloper has made 2 different submissions. We've had Zoom meetings with them. They have improved the facades and have agreed to do some additional facade improvements to the rear. So we believe that it is generally consistent, and some portions of it are actually better than the facades that were included in the redevelopment plan.
I really appreciate you doing that, Scott. The facades, it's kind of a interesting word. They just, to me, I'm not speaking of our town, but everywhere, it's like, why aren't those trees taller? Why aren't those shrubs taller? Why isn't that, well, they're supposedly blah, 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 blah. So I appreciate you looking into that and making sure the facades are not just that. Thank you.
This still needs to go before the land use board.
And that's a great point. This still, as required by the redevelopment plan, has to go for subdivision and site plan approval.
Floor is open for a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Klaus?
Yes.
Mr. Levinson?
Yes.
Mrs. Gilmore? Yes. Mr. Montgomery?
Yes.
Mayor McLaughlin?
Yes. So the next resolution is expressing the Township of Hainsport's opposition to proposed increases to municipal and employee cost contributions to the State Health Benefits Program, 2022-128-9.
I'll make a motion.
Second. Mr. Klaus?
Yes.
Mrs. Gilmore? Yes. Mr. Levinson?
Yes.
Mr. Montgomery?
Yes.
Mayor McLaughlin?
Yes. 2022-129-9 authorizes the appointment of a part-time employee in the Tax and Finance Office.
Make that motion.
Second?
Mrs. Gilmore? Yes. Mr. Montgomery?
Yes.
Mr. Levinson?
Yes.
Mr. Klaus?
Yes.
Mayor McLaughlin?
Yes. 2022-130-9 authorizes the appointment of 2 full-time employees in the Public Works Department. We've had some vacancies there.
So moved. Second?
Mr. Montgomery?
Yes.
Mr. Klaus?
Yes.
Mr. Levinson?
Yes.
Mrs. Gilmore? Yes. Mayor McLaughlin?
Yes. 2022-131-9 authorizes a contract with Decker's Hardscaping and Landscaping for continued sidewalk repairs in the Claremont section of town.
Motion.
Second. Mr. Klaus?
Yes.
Mr. Levinson?
Yes.
Mrs. Gilmore? Yes. Mr. Montgomery?
Yes.
Mayor McLaughlin?
Yes. Resolution 2022-132-9 authorizes an agreement with Before You Hire Incorporated as at an unrequested basis for the purpose of conducting pre-employment and pre-volunteer background checks.
Motion.
Second?
Mrs. Gilmore? Yes. Mr. Levinson?
Yes.
Mr. Klaus?
Yes.
Mr. Montgomery?
Yes.
Mayor McLaughlin?
Yes. Next is an approval of some business licenses, Ed's Trim Shop, Mattress Warehouse, EL1 Sports, Content Renewal, and Rebuild Training.
So moved. Second?
Mr. Montgomery?
Yes.
Mr. Levinson?
Yes.
Mrs. Gilmore? Yes. Mr. Klaus?
Yes.
Mayor McLaughlin?
Yes. Now we're open to comments from the public. Yes, ma'am, come on up.
Good evening, Deborah Playa, 50 Bancroft Lane. I'm here to talk about a resolution that was voted upon in July, the July 12th meeting. I wasn't here, and in fact, when I look at the agenda, it didn't adequately, from my perspective, describe what the resolution was about. It's the resolution that it was consenting to filing of land use application involving municipal property for stormwater discharge through block 100 lots 9 and 10. And I just wanted to comment on that as it relates to the Clean Water Act. There was discussion by the Township Committee, but at the time, they probably weren't aware of the Clean Water Act. And in fact, there's a case that I was involved in. I was helping John Novak, who represented Creekview in the litigation that concluded earlier this year. And just last month, maybe about 3 weeks ago, there was a decision that was made that I think that you should be aware of, because it's kind of similar fact patterns to what you voted upon back in July. It's a case called the Shark River Cleanup Coalition versus Wall Township and the estate of Fred McDowell. Fred McDowell owns about 485 acres in Wall Township. The Shark River runs through it. And back in 1988, the Wall Township, through a declaration of taking, condemned part of his property and created an easement on that property for the purpose of installing a sanitary sewer pipe. Fast forward, in 2018, a hiker was hiking on the property. We never identified who this person was. And this person discovered soil erosion and sand was being deposited into the Shark River. And when you think about pollution, normally you're thinking chemical spill, oil discharge. Under the Clean Water Act, sand is considered a pollutant. The issue is it deposited into a river or a lake or a stream or the ocean through a natural event, or is it deposited because of a man-made condition? And the attorney, the hiker went back, reported it to the Shark River Cleanup Coalition, who then reported it to their attorney, John Brennan. John Brennan sent out a couple of letters, but it didn't adequately tell anybody where this site was, where the soil erosion was. Mr. McDowell tried to find it, couldn't find it. He asked for photos. Brennan never responded. Wall Township sent employees out. They couldn't find it. So they basically just ignored it. And then Mr. Brennan sent out the required, there's a requirement of a 60-day notice, because it's supposed to give the parties the opportunity to clean up, to remediate that site. And when they still couldn't find the site, he filed suit. And ultimately, there was discovery, there were expert reports, site inspections, depositions, court appearances, paper production, an enormous, years of discovery. At the end of the case, the parties filed a motion for summary judgment on two bases. Number one, they said there's no liability because this wasn't a man-made condition. The sand wasn't being deposited into the Shark River because of a man-made condition. It was because of a natural condition. They also filed a motion to dismiss based on the fact that we said that the notice was deficient. The reason I'm bringing this up is because when I saw it's the Land Use Board now has pending before it the resolution that was before this Township Committee in July. And that prompted me to write a couple of letters to the attorney for R&M and Diamantis. I copied Mr. Gillespie on the letters. Mr. Gillespie, one of my letters, the second letter, raised the issue of potential liability to Hainesport. And Mr. Gillespie had an associate in his environmental unit do some research and prepare a legal memo. He agreed with me. Where we parted ways was he said there's no liability for Hainesport. I don't know whether or not there's liability. As a lawyer, when somebody contacts me, I don't know whether or not you're liable. I have to conduct discovery to find out whether or not you're liable. In the Shark River case, Fred McDowell, the owner of the property, similarly situated to Hainesport with respect to this resolution that you passed in July, they paid $82,000 to Mr. Novak to defend that. Wall Township paid $177,000 to defend it. And the reason we know this is because I know that how much they spent was because under the Clean Water Act, a private citizen has the right to file a lawsuit. If they win, whether it's the plaintiff or the defendant, the prevailing party has the right to make an application for attorney's fees, and that's exactly what we did. When we did that, Mr. Brennan took it up to the Third Circuit Court of Appeals, and the decision came out after the application was before this township committee. It came out August 24th, where the Third Circuit Court of Appeals, they affirmed the federal court, but on a different basis. So we won, and we didn't renew our application for fees. But I just wanted to let you know that there doesn't have to be a chemical spill, there doesn't have to be an oil spill. If ultimately, at some point down the line, R&M and Diamantis are going to turn that project over to an HOA, and if that HOA doesn't properly maintain it, if there's soil erosion, and we know that it's sandy soil because that's all they talked about when they wanted to put it on Creekview's, have the discharge go into Creekview's pond. If there's soil, if there's sand that gets deposited into the Rancocas Creek because of soil erosion, Hainesport will get sued, and there's not going to be insurance coverage. There's in another life, I worked in the insurance claims industry, and insurance coverage was one of the things that I had to do, and I still do it as a lawyer. In any event, the HOA that Diamantis ultimately sets up will get insurance, but that general liability policy is going to cover their property. It's not going to cover a condition on Hainesport's property. So you're not going to get insurance coverage through some other HOA. I'm sure that Mr. Gillespie will have a good agreement for defense and indemnification. The problem is that if the HOA doesn't have the money to indemnify you, the paper is worthless. So I just wanted to bring to your attention that even if ultimately at the end of the day, Hainesport is determined not to be liable, if there is an incident because of the presence of this pipe on Hainesport's property, you're going to have to hire your lawyers, and it will cost a lot of money. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Following fellow Deborah Harris, 7 Elsinore Drive. So I was actually here at that meeting, and I remember one of you, I don't remember who it was, raised a concern about the water going into the Rancocas, and whether or not there were issues, risks, liability, and I think there was some discussion about that potentially going back to the Land Use Board for further discussion. So I think, what my fellow resident brings up is a really good caution, right? That, and the case number is 21-2016. Doesn't even have a slip number yet. So, it involved an easement over town-owned land, and over time it had eroded. So you can have proper permits, you can have an easement, you can have a contract, but because the Clean Water Act authorizes any citizen to bring a suit in federal court against any person who's alleged to be in violation of the act. So if you are a landowner, the easement may not protect you. The insurance may not protect you. Contract indemnification may not be enough to protect you from certain violations of federal law. And because any citizen can bring a suit, that makes this even more risky. So the creation of this easement, the proper permit, is not going to necessarily relieve us as property owners, the town, from potential liability. And that liability exists for the lifetime of that pipe running along the property and dumping stuff into the Rancocas. So I think that at the very least, this body, given that risk, should consider putting this question or this request to a very experienced environmental attorney, someone who can assess the long-term legal risk, liability, the short-term, the mid-range, somebody who can fully explore the potential risks and liability of what's being asked here. Anything that could arise from the township allowing this easement that will allow this pipe to run across the land and dump stormwater or whatever it is, sand, into a river that is a covered water under the CWA. I mean, the safest thing to do is to, just not go into the venture, right? That's another option that the town has. So the town can just, nope, we're not even going to take that risk. But if you do, I think that there's exceptional due diligence that's required here, and not just normal due diligence because of the implications. So, this kind of outlay, discovery, federal lawsuits, attorneys that can practice in federal court, the discovery, which is very regimented, all of that's going to come from our taxes. So as a resident, ultimately, what's going to feed this beast is our taxes. So anything that we can do to, minimize the risk here to our coffers as a resident, to me, is really a no-brainer in terms of due diligence, or just out and out saying, this is just too risky. It's just not a good idea, right? It's something that this body would need to determine, and of course, the land use. But since we've already signaled the intent to continue to raise taxes year over year, I think that it's really important to be diligent about how we spend our money, and to not invite, especially a federal lawsuit, one that's as risky as this. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, who wants to comment next? Anna?
Anna Evans, 63 Perry Drive. I want to build a little bit on what these two ladies have said, and also refer back to what I said at the beginning about the amount of development that we are dealing with in Hainesport right now. I'm going to make some observations. This is sensitive ground, so I just want to make sure that you understand that I'm doing it in the spirit of great respect. The top 4 donors to the Hainesport Republican Party over the last 6 years have been in order: 1, Alimo Engineering; 2, Taylor Design Group; 3, the Hainesport Industrial Park; and 4, the Diamond Diner, who are, of course, the owners of the land on which this development that we're talking about is going to take place. I understand that those donations are legal. I get it. But here's my problem. The perception of seeing those donations and then seeing decisions like this go through, which may or may not put the township at a great liability to taxpayer funds, in addition to Hainesport residents' perceptions that there is in general too much development going on, particularly of warehouses, the perception is not good. And if I were you guys, I would want to avoid generating that perception that there is any linkage between the people who are supporting your campaigns and the amount of development and the decisions that are being made. Thank you.
Anybody else? Public comment? Yes, come on up.
Hello, I'm Nancy Finley, and this is Jack Finley. We live at 47 Phillips Road. We're here tonight to talk about our concerns on the new procedures from Burlington County on how they treat the brush in front of the guardrails that is being done within the township.
What notice can I approach the bench?
Sure.
So we've been there for almost 25 years. Through this time frame, they typically come out twice a year and brush whack brush that's close to the guardrail. As a resident there is behind the guardrail, when we come out, it's nice when it's clear. So having a cleared path, which I believe is a rule that they have to keep up with to keep them clear for safety reasons, is important. With that, about a year and a half ago, they changed their procedures in which now they spray a chemical down and just kill everything that's there. So with that, we've noticed a lot of erosion has taken place as well. Not only this, the concern is the chemicals being there, which clear, like, when you're walking down, it's just black, and then it goes green again. So you know exactly where they're being sprayed.
And on the other side of the guardrail is the Rancocas Creek. That you're
It's funny
talking
they bring up
about the Rancocas Creek. All that erosion is going into the Rancocas Creek, which is in front of our property.
And the chemicals.
And the chemicals
on that erosion is severe concerns with health. When they were spraying the chemicals, our son-in-law was living with us, and he was jogging by the workers as they were spraying the chemicals on the guardrails and the grub that's around them.
So on top of that, on that one picture, I'm not sure who has, when we had called, so we kind of tried to follow the trail, and then we found out that Burlington County was in charge of it, and they had said they changed these procedures due to cost. It's, less costly to do it, and also they said health. So the health of the workers, I guess it can be dangerous doing equipment to cut brush back. I would have to say it's just as dangerous spraying chemicals if you're the one spraying them, especially all day. On top of that, so when we noticed it, though, we had called, and you see the manager there, he apologized. He said, we're supposed to have a team that comes back to make sure no erosion takes place. And that one picture, they came back and put concrete in. It's like a mixed concrete. The very next rain, that's where all the big holes came from, and that was in number D. You can see the concrete that's sitting there. That probably went into the creek as well. Like, it's gone. The soil's gone, that's gone. Yesterday, the truck was back again. Everything's refilled in again. So all those holes are now gone.
Is this on Phillips Road?
Yes.
Going from our property.
Right, and this is the bridge, right? So we determined that Burlington County is responsible. They handle the bridges, yeah. They handle the bridges.
Yeah, they confirm they handle the
road there.
And the guardrails. So we're just looking for guidance, we don't feel it's safe,
Plus the erosion and the concrete.
Well, at this point, I think our administrator is going to make a comment on it.
Sure, and thank you for calling. It was a great conversation that we had. So I did follow up, and I talked to the supervisor of buildings and grounds, just as you did as well, to kind of get an understanding of what it is they're using. Again, pretty much the same questions that you had. So they did state that they do have a licensed employee that does the spraying. They follow the federal guidelines for this type of vegetation control, which is a practice that apparently is used in other counties, as well as, the state uses it as well. It is a dry-based chemical that attaches to the vegetation and does not run off. They also use a drift controller when spraying, which I guess is something that helps minimize the overspray and keeps it in direct line with the vegetation that they're trying to control and mitigate. DEP is informed, and they do communicate with them on a regular basis. So the county is responsible for all of the bridges, and as well as their county roadways and their infrastructure. And you are correct, they said that the reason why they changed this way of managing the guide rails, and they do that for safety, they have to do that for vehicular traffic as well as pedestrian, is because of cost efficiencies. Apparently, they have hundreds of miles of guardrail that they need to keep clear. They have 4 crews of approximately 9 employees each. Each crew is responsible for all county roads, bridges, and properties. So each group is responsible for about 9 to 10 towns, and there's 40 municipalities in Burlington County. When I did talk to him, I explained about the erosion with that mixture that they utilized. He was not aware of that, and again, he did say that he was going to send his crew back out, so it's good to hear that they did follow up on that. So it appears the MSDS sheets are posted, they do the proper notifications, and it appears at the state level and the federal level, this is an acceptable means, and he said that this chemical attaches directly onto the vegetation, and it does not run off.
We've done some research on the chemicals, and we disagree with that.
Yeah.
Just for
Well, the pictures show what you're saying too. So.
Right. Some of the agents do last longer. They do go into the soil.
They seep into the soil, and studies show they've been there for over 3 years.
A study on the chemicals they're using, I'm sorry, I have to disagree that it's safe for.
But I understand it is approved by the EPA, and that's what they're using as their backdrop.
Yeah.
But is there a better solution
Is there a
that we
better
can come up
solution
with as well to, instead of spray?
Yeah, that would be a counter.
Yeah, and thank you for bringing that to our attention too. It's, so the county's responsible for taking care of it, but we don't like the way they're taking care of it, right? So we should have some type of recourse, and John, I'd like, talk to you about this, about how that looks, because when you look at those pictures, it's obvious that, and we've seen some of this, if we look around where we see bridges and we see this elsewhere, it's not just Hainesport. When you see it, it's like, what the heck happened there? It looks like it was some type of landing of some sort, so it's pretty horrible. And it's one thing if it's just by fields, it's bad enough, but when you have the Rancocas right nearby, and you're really close to residential areas as well, it's not really, I know you guys are in more of the farmland of Hainesport, but it's still not way out there somewhere. It's still a residential area, so I have some concerns about that.
I have a concern, because why do you want to kill vegetation that's holding back erosion? I mean, you know, I grew up out in Fenimore Road, farmlands, and any place you had potential erosion, you tried to get vegetation to grow. Matter of fact, you didn't care what kind of vegetation, as long as it grew and it held back the, but you would never try to kill it, because you're just creating erosion. So I totally agree with you, and I'm going to go out and take a look at it, because I don't like seeing that. I think that's...
Well, I guess because of Paula's call, they would just back out again, so you might want to...
It still doesn't make their
It doesn't
procedure.
look nice,
Their
but
procedure's
all that
still not...
erosion is
If
about
it's creating, killing all the vegetation all the way down, it's not the proper...
We're not allowed to wash our own trucks because of perceived pollution. And I think the point that you're making exceeds that a little bit, so we need to look into it.
Okay, thank you.
Again, I appreciate it very much.
Thank you.
Last call for comments from the public. Anybody online want to make a comment? Or the one person online? No? Okay. So, next would be comments from the administrator.
So I do want to thank the governing body for passing the resolution opposing the state health benefits rate increase. That will affect the taxpayers as well as our employees. So apparently that was put on the back burner last month, but I was just informed that the State Health Benefits Commission is considering a greater than 20% rate increase for local governments in the state health benefits plan, and this matter may be considered at their meeting tomorrow. So I do want to thank the governing body for that. Not too much to report, not so great information. We were not selected to receive the $75,000 BPU charging station grant for our municipal building, unfortunately. These grants are determined based on a scoring method. Some of the criteria includes equipment to be installed, tourism, infrastructure, location, and bonus points. Unfortunately, we did score the minimum amount permitted for the grant submission, but I do want to try again. So hopefully when the next round comes out, there'll still be funding available for Hainesport Township. And then again, with Burlington County, through a shared service with them, we are currently having fixed a 30-year ongoing storm pipe issue at 1609 Edwin Street. They started that work today. Hopefully they'll be done by the end of the week. And then once that is finally repaired, I will be making a recommendation to have that section of the original storm pipe strip lined. And that's all I have. Thank you.
I see we have two officers in the back. I was informed that you did not want to make a comment possibly, but would you like to come up and make a comment? Okay. I apologize for waiting.
Thank you for being here.
Thanks. Yes, we appreciate your presence. So we'll start with comments from the solicitor.
Mr. Mayor, members of the committee, thank you. Let me just, if I can, address the concerns about the resolution that was adopted in July that was spoken to 3 times this evening. First of all, it was just a resolution granting consent for the application to move forward, right? It didn't grant the easement. In fact, it was specifically conditioned upon, eventually there has to be an agreement or that development's not going anywhere, right? When it reaches the planning board, should the planning board grant the approval, it will be conditioned upon an easement agreement having been reached with the township and an easement being recorded. So that's the first thing. It was simply a consent to the application being filed. It was not an easement, nor was it an easement agreement. In Ms. Plina's comments, She references this Shark River Cleanup Coalition case versus Wall Township in the Clean Water Act. And Ms. Ply is correct. She did provide me with information, and I appreciate, well, there you are, Deborah. I appreciated that. As a result of her initial communication to me about the concerns with the Clean Water Act, we had an attorney in our office who did a review of that, issued an opinion, which Ms. Playa has because she submitted an open request. It wasn't sent privileged, and it concluded that we would not be exposed to any liability under the Clean Water Act simply by providing an easement because the pipe won't be ours. And there were some other conditions as well. Plus, the anticipation is it will be a permitted by the DEP discharge. If it's not permitted, it may never occur. So that's one thing, and she's right. So we do part ways on our interpretation of what risk the Clean Water Act poses to the committee. I don't think it's that great a risk, particularly if the easement, as it will be, is written the way it should be. As to the Third Circuit opinion, after that was done, Ms. Ply again sent me that because she wanted me to be aware of this Third Circuit decision that was issued, I think, after our opinion. Yeah, August 24th was the order for the court. And in that case, the trial court had dismissed the plaintiff's complaint, the Shark River Cleanup Coalition, or the Township of Wall, I guess it was, Wall in the state of Fred McDowell, had dismissed it on notice grounds. The issue of liability under the Clean Water Act had not been reached. The Third Circuit decision also didn't reach the Clean Water Act issue. What the Third Circuit says is that the district court made a mistake in applying a certain standard to the notice requirements that it didn't feel were violated. It did, however, conclude that the Cleanup Coalition's notice was deficient on another ground. It did not include sufficient information to permit the defendants to identify the specific standard, limitation, or order alleged to have been violated. Accordingly, we will affirm the district court's dismissal of the Cleanup Coalition's citizen suit. So the issue of liability was not decided in that case. It was simply a notice issue. And the people seeking relief under the Clean Water Act had their lawsuit dismissed because their notice wasn't adequate. Certainly, Ms. Ply is right in her memo to me, anybody can file a lawsuit. Anybody can file a lawsuit. We've seen that. We saw it 4 or 5 years ago on a frivolous Oprah case when a candidate who became a township official was seen wandering the halls and they alleged an Open Public Meetings Act violation because he was back there. He wasn't even in office yet. He wasn't even elected, I don't think, but he wasn't in office, so it wasn't open. We had to go through all that nonsense, right? So I appreciate Ms. Ply's comments. I'm not saying that ultimately she's definitely wrong, but we do just disagree on where the liability and how extensive it might be, which I think brings us to Ms. Harris's comments. That the township should have a recognized environmental attorney review this. That's certainly the governing body's prerogative. But the author of the memo that Ms. Ply has, and that is a public record, the attorney from our office, was a DEP attorney. That's how he came to us. He was an environmental lawyer. He's now heading up something in the state of Washington. He left us a few weeks ago, and he's doing something out there. I don't know what it is, but he's doing something pretty significant in Washington.
Hey, John, I was listening to all this, and of course, I sit on the planning board, and Scott backed me up on this, up or down. I know this easement was discussed, that was going to flow directly into the Creek View Pond. It's been redesigned. I think it's being redesigned again. But is it not, is the basin that's going to accept the water from the project sufficient for a 100 or 500-year storm, according to all of the testimony that we received from our engineer and from the applicant's engineers?
So I don't want to comment on the engineering of the application. The basin itself is designed to meet the quality and quantity under the DEP regulations, and that was part of the original testimony and will continue to be. This is an emergency overflow discharge point only.
Right, so just to put everything in perspective, and again, we're not hearing the case here, it's not the forum to hear that, but since it was brought up in public comment, it almost sounds like it's being construed that this particular project is going to drain water either into the Creekview project or into the Rancoke. It's not. And again, I recall it was at least 100-year. I agree. It was at least 100. So you're right. And I was going to ask you this, John. Can somebody file suit because 100 years from now, sand might go into the Rancocas because of this overflow pipe may be used? Is that a viable lawsuit?
Well, maybe that's two different questions. Can someone file that lawsuit? Yes. Is that a viable lawsuit? Yeah. It's two different questions. But the other thing is this, I would assume it's not going to eventually discharge into the creek. I think you have to assume it is, right? Otherwise, we don't need the waterfront permit, or they don't need it. But the point is that I think, at least by one speaker, and possibly two, the quote risk that you are putting the taxpayers to by even considering this is grossly overstated. It was specifically said that you need exceptional due diligence if you're going to take this risk. Federal lawsuits are expensive and cost the taxpayers money, so due diligence is a no-brainer. Look, I handle a lot of federal lawsuits. I just received a 49-page opinion dismissing a pretty significant one in a Camden County case of federal lawsuit. They are expensive. Just because they're expensive doesn't mean you've taken a greater risk. And so the question is, what's the risk? I've suggested to you that the risk isn't that great, both in terms of the law itself, because you're simply giving an easement, it's not your infrastructure, but then two, protecting it through an easement agreement and the indemnification, the hold harmless, whether the association can afford it or not, it's going to have to impose those costs on its homeowners. They don't have a choice. So I don't know that the risk is that expensive, or is that extensive, rather. I don't think it's that big a risk. So to be accused, as you were this evening, of jeopardizing the taxpayers' money by inviting a lawsuit that has great risk, I reject that proposition. And similarly, it was said, quote, since you've already signaled the intent to raise taxes year after year, you need to approach this carefully so it doesn't cost even more. I don't know how you signaled the intent to raise taxes year after year. I'm not sure what that even meant, except it served as to tee up the next clause, which was approach this very carefully so it doesn't cost even more. You can't stop people from filing frivolous lawsuits. You can't stop people from filing moderately viable lawsuits, right? That's just not it. But what you can do is protect against the risk as best you can, okay? Thank you.
Thank you. Bruce, I'm going to start with you. Public comment?
Well, I guess...
Public comment, committee comment?
Okay. Had a great time tonight, this evening, helping raise money for people who are hungry. We have a great team of people here in the committee that we were able to get together and participate as a team. And I think they raised quite a bit of money. I'm happy to be a part of that. Thank you.
Okay, so yes, I was pleased to have been part of the township's participation at the Hainesport ShopRite's Bagging for Hunger this evening. Several members of the committee and also of the township employees attended this evening to help raise awareness of the hunger situation and encourage people to donate as well as round up their purchases for the community food bank. It's been my honor to be participant for the last 6 years, and it's well worth it. Friday the 16th, the Recreation Commission's having a dinner dance at the firehouse. That should be a great time. I know several committee people will be there. Thursday, the 22nd, the Senior Citizens Meeting, JAG 1 will be holding a seminar regarding your lower back and sciatica. On the 30th, the movie in the park is Ghostbusters.
Who are you going to call?
October 1st is the Food Truck Antique Cars and Scarecrow Contest here at the Township Building. On the 1st, also, October 1st, will be, the fire company is sponsoring a beef and cheer comedy show benefit for $35 at the firehouse to raise money for a sick child. On the 7th, the movie in the park is Casper, and there'll also be a trunk or treat, so if you have little ones or know of neighbors that have little ones, it's always a fun time, and the committee participates, decorating their cars and giving out candy. And if you would please download the Township app for more information. On a more serious, little heavier note, this is National Suicide Awareness Month, and they've come out with a new emergency number, which is to dial 988. They're hoping it will be become familiar to people as 911 is. You can still call the prevention hotline that still exists, 1-800-273-8255. It's not only for emergency assistance for the patient, but it's also a source of information for family and friends to have access to the resources. So I encourage everybody to please pass that along. Thank you.
Ken? Thank you, Mayor. I was happy to be able to participate again, as I did last year with the bagging for hunger in Bronx County. It's, when you think of people that are hungry, you don't think of our town, you don't think of our county. Sometimes you don't even think of our state, you think of elsewhere, but certainly an issue everywhere. So it was good to be able to raise awareness and help bag. It's interesting how many people wanted to do their own bagging. They brought their own bags, they wanted to bag their own stuff, but I strong-armed them and made them let me bag them. No, I'm kidding. But we were able to help them bag, so that was a good thing. When I joined this committee, I certainly never expressed any intent to raise taxes year after year. I don't remember anyone ever saying that here. We typically want to do our best to manage risk, and that's what you have to do. It's anything else. If you're going to buy insurance to help you with your risk, you may decide not to buy insurance, and that's called self-insured because you think the risk is lower. So you need to be able to juggle that always, not only in our own lives, but here we need to do that for the residents. Hiring an environmental lawyer when we have a law firm that works with us, and as Mr. Gillespie has said, he was able to talk to them about that. I want to mention that. The other thing is, just as far as taxes are concerned, just talking about that, I go through this when we pay bills, we'll get to this later. On a quarterly basis, we will pay a bill for $835,000 and some change to Burlington County. We will pay $728,000 to the Hainesport Board of Education, and we will pay $290,000 to the Rancocas Valley Regional School. So if you look at it, those are very high bills that we collect and pay for the residents. We're not responsible for any of that. We collect it and then we pay it. So Our Hainesport municipal taxes are a very small percentage of the overall tax bill that we each are responsible for, so, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, back to the taxes. I will tell you, I'm very proud of our tax structure in this township. We have a very low municipal rate. More and more people like it the more I talk to. And we have zero debt. I mean, I don't know how many people can have that type of fiscal responsibility in their house. That's pretty good. So I'm proud of everybody who works hard on this township, the committee, everybody that works in our finance department. I think we do a wonderful job and we should be proud of it. It was fun bagging today. That was always a good time. See residents, it was good. I want to talk about all my comments, Hainesport. School's back in. Those of you who have kids that are raised, those of you who had kids that went to school with my kids and no longer have kids in the school, I know that you have relatives that participated with the PTO and different things. I joined the PTO. I'm going to the meeting tomorrow night. If your kids are grown, take an interest in our school. Help them. These children are children of our town. Make a donation to the PTO. I think it's very worthwhile. It's very worthwhile to be vested in our children, our town's children education system and what they do. So I would invite everybody to come to the PTO meeting tomorrow night and get involved. I think it's a great thing, and these are the future of our town, and I think we need to invest in them. So thank you very much. That's it.
Year after year, we used to have budget meetings, and it seemed like it always snowed, right, Mick? When we had a budget meeting, we'd go through the budget line by line by line. I never saw any political opposition here for a budget meeting. I never did. To pick a line item, whether we're buying too many paper clips, or we're wasting money on this, or wasting money. I don't recall ever seeing that. It's just election time that this stuff comes up. We also had a weak candidate at one time that he wanted to run on no taxes. And and I think you remember this, Mick, we had a pretty sharp lady as our CFO, and she slapped him around and said, "Do you know what you just cost me? A penny is going to cost me $750,000 over 10 years, okay? That's why we're debt-free here. We don't bond for fire trucks. We don't bond for ambulances. We paid for them. We don't bond, $500,000 a year, Paula, for roads. How much are we spending on roads? Right up and down our roads. Then go to Morristown, okay? Tell me whose roads are better. Are we spending about?
Well, 500 to $1 million plus.
A year.
Grants every other year.
Grants that you've applied for. Public Works trucks, all brand new. Everybody notice how great the leaf collection was this last year? Because we bought 2 more trucks. We bought a grapple truck and we bought another vacuum, okay? Our opposition wants us to privatize trash. Well, we looked at it at the budget meeting. It would cost $2 million a year to bring trash collection in-house. Not a good move when you really look at it. And that's why we are debt-free. And I'm proud of it too, Jerry, and it's not necessarily the committees of the past. We've had sound advice, legal advice. We've had sound planning, and I think we've got excellent professionals now that work for us. So that's what I'm going to say on taxes. I see Mrs. Prskavich is here that is you, right? Okay. I mentioned last meeting that George, our fire official, and Paula were able to get the water company to start changing the thread, especially in Hainesport Chase, right, Paula?
All of them.
All of them to the Mount Holly thread, which means a lot to you and your family, because of the disaster that you had. So, we've kept taxes stable. And again, as Jerry said, we're only responsible for about 13 to 14% of the tax dollar. We've been lucky that the school hasn't had increases. and the taxes are pretty stable. And I think that we have election time coming, whether I particularly win or lose, I think we've done a good job for the last 20-something years that I've been around here running things, and I'm just part of it. I'm not the guy who runs the show. I'm just part of it. So I appreciate everything that everybody's done, and hopefully will continue to do. So that's my comment for tonight. We have a bill list.
I make a motion to pay the bills.
Second?
Mrs. Gilmore?
Yes.
Mr. Montgomery?
Yes.
Mr. Levinson?
Yes.
Mr. Klaus?
Yes.
Mayor McLaughlin?
Yes. We have an executive session tonight?
Yes, we do. I expect 15 minutes, but it usually winds up being double that. So I'm going to cut it in half and say 23 minutes.
For anticipated litigation.
Yes.
So we're going to discuss anticipated litigation. Do we expect any formal action, John, to be taken after the meeting? So you can hang around, but nothing really is going to happen but closing the meeting after we're done.
So I think formal action may be taken.
Oh, maybe?
Possibly, yes.
Or I might,
Formal action may be taken after.
I was corrected. We may take formal action on the result of the meeting. So are we going to hold it in here, or are we going to go?
We're going to go in the back.
Okay, we're going to go in the back room, so if the audience wants to hang around, you can hang around. So we need a motion to go into executive session.
So moved.
Second?
Mrs. Gilmore? Yes. Mr. Montgomery?
Yes.
Mr. Levinson?
Yes.
Mr. Klaus?
Yes.
Mayor McLaughlin?
Yes.
Turn this off.
You don't have to, because we're going to go in the back room this time.